Welcome to Node.js for beginners. In this course, you'll be learning the fundamentals of Node.js, Express, MongoDB, and OpenAI. We'll start by understanding what Node.js is and how it works. We'll then work on creating our first server from Express. We'll learn the fundamentals of Express and how we can work with routes on Express. We'll then start working on our project BooksWizard, which will help you understand the basics of MongoDB, how we can integrate the MongoDB into our Node.js app, how we can utilize OpenAI or ChatGPT for suggestions, and we'll be learning so much more in between. I thank you for choosing this course, and let's get started. So before diving into the coding of Node.js, let's first understand what Node.js is. So if you look into the typical behavior of the JavaScript, most of the JavaScript codes are executed by the browser on the client side, right? What Node.js does is it creates the environment in which the JavaScript can thrive and execute on the backend or on the server side. Why? Because it enables the JavaScript to access the stuffs that were not previously available to JavaScript. For instance, accessing the file system of your server. There was no way for the JavaScript to access the file system if it was only running on the browser side, right? But Node.js enables the JavaScript to access the things like file system and many different other stuff that you will typically need for the backend development. What enables the Node.js for doing so? How does it create the environment? Is Node.js is built, it is JavaScript runtime built on Google V8 JavaScript engine, which creates an environment for the JavaScript to be executed on the server side. But in simple terms, you can say that the Node.js is the backend that is built on the JavaScript. So now that you have a basic idea of what Node.js is, let's try to understand why Node.js is an important skill to learn in 2023. You can see the list of all these great companies that are utilizing Node.js for their businesses. Powerful businesses like LinkedIn, PayPal, NASA, Medium, Microsoft, all of these great companies are using Node.js. So I can assure you that Node.js is going nowhere. By learning Node.js in 2023, you are equipping yourself with the technology that will help you now and in the future as well. It has a very promising future because Node.js can be used to create scalable and reliable backends. Node.js is easier to learn, it has a great community, and is extremely in demand. And with all those top companies using Node.js as a backend, the demand for Node.js developer is expected to grow incredibly in the future. So I congratulate you for selecting Node.js and making your way towards a rewarding future. So before starting our coding on Node.js, let's first install our IDE. We'll be using Visual Studio Code throughout this course, and we'll be exploring some awesome extensions that will help us become a better backend developer and help us code efficiently. So for downloading the Visual Studio Code, just browse through code.visualstudio.com and select a Visual Studio Code for your device. So now that you have installed the Visual Studio Code on your system, it's time for installing some extension that will help us code efficiently. So for that, on your left hand side, go to the extensions tab, and the first extension that we will be installing is ESLint. Search for ESLint and you'll be presented with some of the extensions, and you can install the first extension that pops up here. So click at install and wait for a while. So what ESLint actually does, it recognizes the patterns and find errors and bugs on our JavaScript code as we type. So it will help us write error-free codes and can help us debug issues faster. So this is the most important extension that any JavaScript developer can have. So after installing this, let's move to our next extension. So the next extension we'll be installing is a Prettier extension. So on search bar, type Prettier, P-R-E-T-T-I-E-R, and you'll be presented with some of the plugins, and as usual, click at the first plugin and click on install. So what Prettier does is, as the name implies, it makes our code prettier. Prettier is a code formatter that takes care of all the indentations, makes our code easy to read, easy to understand, and more organized. So there's one more step involved in activating the Prettier for our Visual Studio Code. For that, click at File, go to Preferences, click at Settings, and type Format on Save. Once you type Format on Save, you can see these options, and you must check this option. What we are saying is we are allowing the Prettier to format our code or lines of codes once we save the file. So this is the first step. The next step is to select the Prettier as our default formatter. For that, clear the source bar and type Formatter. So you can see this first option, the default formatter is none, make it Prettier. So by performing these steps, what we are doing is we are allowing the prettier to be our default formatter and asking the prettier to format our codes each time we save the file. So now that we are done with prettier, let's close all the windows or all the tabs and search for another extension. So the next extension we'll be installing is the error lanes extension. So as usual, click at the first one and click at install. So what error lanes actually does is it highlights the warnings and errors in our JavaScript code as we type. It shows the error side by side so we know exactly where the error is occurring, which will help us write error-free codes and help us debug faster. So these three extensions, ESLint, Prettier, and ErrorLens, are the most important extensions for any JavaScript developers. Now there are a couple of other extensions that I'll be talking about, but these are totally optional. You can opt out of not installing them, but I do recommend that you install these as well. So the first extension will be Material Icon Theme. So what this does is it makes our working directory beautiful. Beautiful in the sense that it provides an icon, material icon for each of our file system type. So if you are prompted with select icon file theme dialog, then click at material icon theme, or simply you can click at set file icon theme and you can select material icon theme. So the next extension we will be installing, or the optional extension that we will be installing, is the Oceanic theme. So this theme is totally a personal preference. You don't need to install this, but if you are like me, have trouble working at night, then this would be a go-to theme for you. So click at install, and after installing you should be prompted with the dialog to apply the theme, and I personally like this dimmed busy one. So click at this and you are done. So I believe this extension that we have just installed will help you on your journey of becoming a efficient backend developer. So without further ado, let's move to our next lesson. So the next step for setting up our development environment is installing the Node.js on our device. It is a JavaScript runtime environment that enables us to run JavaScript on the server side. It also enables us to start the server and do other stuff on our device that we'll typically do on a real online server. So for installing the Node.js, just browse in through nodejs.org and then download the long-term support version on your device. After you have downloaded the installer file, go ahead and install it. You'll be guided through a wizard and everything is pretty straightforward, so just accept the terms and click on next. You will be installing all these things. Click at next, next, and then install. So now that we have installed Node.js on our device, let's verify that the Node.js has been installed successfully. For that, go to command prompt or the terminal and type node.js version. It is a version check for Node. And if you see the version of the Node.js that you just installed, then the Node.js is working fine. And we are ready for our development of our backend. So if Node.js version check is working on your device, then you have successfully installed and the Node.js is up and running on your device. There is no additional configurations required. So by installing the Node.js, what we did is we created an environment for the JavaScript to be executed on the server side, which will help us create a server and do other backend stuffs. So after the Node.js has been installed, we are ready for our journey of the backend development. So I'll see you at the next lesson. While working with Node.js and API endpoints, it is very important for us to check those API endpoints or test it every now and then. It will be difficult for us to test API endpoints through our browser, so we'll be needing some API platform for that, and we have selected Postman for it. Postman will make our API testing and debugging easier. So let's go ahead and install Postman. For installing the Postman, navigate into postman.com and then download for your operating system. Once the Postman is downloaded and installed, this is the interface that you should be getting. If you have not yet created a Postman account, then you can go ahead and create one. Create an account will make it easier for you to test your APIs and to assess the APIs from different platforms, right? So it is recommended that you create an Postman account. So once this is done, we are ready to create our first server in Node.js. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson, we will be learning to create our first web server from Node.js. So let's get started. So for my project, I have created a directory called Node.js first project. And now I'll be opening this directory from VS Code. So for that, launch your VS Code. So once the VS Code is launched, go to File and then Open Folder. Now navigate into the newly created directory and then select folder. And just like that, our directory has been opened in our VS Code. So the first thing that we want to do is to create a new file, the entry point for our project. So the new file name will be app.js, and this will act as our entry point for our Node.js app. So let's go ahead and create our first server inside of this app.js. Now for creating a server or working with server in Node.js, we will be needing an inbuilt module of Node.js called HTTP module. So let's go ahead and import that in our app.js file. So const HTTP equals to require HTTP. By doing this, we are importing the inbuilt HTTP module of Node.js. So const server will be the http.createServer function. So this will create our server. Now the next step is to listen to the incoming request or the request from the clients. So what we can do is server.listen, and then the first parameter will be the port in which our server will run. So typically in Node.js we keep port 8000, so let's do 8000 for now. And the second parameter will be the address. So our address will be localhost, right? And the third parameter will be a callback function, and it will be executed if the server is started successfully. So this is an arrow function, and inside of this curly braces we will be writing console.log server started successfully, right? Now let's save this. So now we need to execute this app.js file from our Node.js. So for that, navigate into terminal and then new terminal. So in the terminal you can type node and then the file that node needs to execute. So it will be our app.js file. So click enter. And then you can see server started successfully. So congratulations, you have created your own first server. So now let's test this server from our Postman. So navigate into the Postman, and using this plus icon you can create a new collection. So click there and then rename this collection as the first project, right? And inside of this we'll be creating a new request. You can create a request from here, or you can right click this and then add a request, right? So when I created a new request, you can see that this method of this request is a get method, and in REST API there are different methods of request, and we will be discussing this in detail in our REST API section. But for now our request is get request, and our URL will be http and then localhost 8000, because we are listening to 8000, right? So let's save this and let's send the request. So you can see that Postman is sending in request, but it is not receiving any response, and the reason is that we are not sending any response from our code. So now let's send a response from our backend. For that we need to access this create server, and inside of it will be an arrow function, right? And this function will have access to two parameters called request and response. And typically in Node.js, while we are working with request and response, we simply write req for request and res for response. So now let's send in the response to our client. So for that we need to tap into our response parameter, because we are trying to send in response, right? So res meaning response dot end, and this end functionality will end the request and send a response. So the response that we want to send will be inside of this. So hello from the server, right? After saving this, you need to restart your server to see the changes, right? For restarting the server, what you can do is go into the terminal and then press Ctrl C or Command C. So Ctrl C, press this couple of times and your server will close, and then you can again type node app.js to start the server again. So the server is started successfully. Navigate into the Postman and send the request again. So you can see that we have gotten the response from the Postman, and it's saying hello from the server. So congratulations, we have created our first server and tested it successfully. So congratulations, but in this course we will not be creating our server or working with server with HTTP module. Instead we will be working with Express for creating and working with servers. It is way better than HTTP module because it provides an easier way for us to work with requests and responses in our Node.js app. And it is an upgraded version of HTTP, so we'll be using that. So in the next lesson we will be installing Express in our project and then starting our server with Express. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson we will be learning to install Express and use it for server creation and working with servers. But before that we need to first understand what npm is. npm stands for Node Package Manager. If you navigate into this npmjs.com, you will be presented with a landing page of npm. npm is a repository or a collection of open source code that we as a developers can use for speeding our development process. And Express is one of those open source projects. It was created by developers so that developers like us can take benefit from it and can speed up our development process. So in search packages, type Express, and then you will be presented with an Express package. So you can use this package to speed up our development and to handle our requests and responses in an easier way. So let's install it. So navigate into your VS Code. Make sure you have opened your folder in VS Code. You have opened your terminal. If you are already opened it, you can close it for now. And then we must initialize the npm first. We must initialize node package manager or the npm so that we can import packages from this huge collection of open source project, right? So for that, you need to type npm and then init, node package manager initialization, right? And after this npm init, it will ask you for the package name. So I want you to press enter multiple times. So you can always change this later. So in pressing enter multiple time will do the job. So you can see that npm initialization has created a new file called package.json, and inside of this we will have all the dependencies that this project will use, and it has all the other items like name of the project, version description, and other things like that, right? So now we will be installing the express in our project. So npm meaning node package manager install and then the package name, and it will be express, right? And by doing this, we are importing the express from the huge repository of open source, right? npm install express. So once this is done, you can see that in dependencies we have express, meaning that this project depends upon this express for running, right? And you see that we have a new folder called node modules. Inside of it there are different other folders that is created by this express. So we do not need to look inside of this node modules. It is just like a system folder, right? So now that this express is installed in our system, let's navigate into this app.js and let's modify this code to use express instead of this http module. So let's remove everything that is inside of it for now, and then we'll be creating our server using express. So instead of importing the http module for now, we will be importing the express over here. So const express equals to require express. By doing this, we are importing the express into our file. So const, so our app will be the express app, right? By doing this, we are declaring that our app is an express app. Now for listening to the incoming request or for creating the server, we can do app.listen, and then the first parameter will be the port, so 8000, and the second parameter will be the callback function that will be executed if the server is started successfully. So console.log, and then the server started successfully, right? Let's save this and let's start our server. So node app.js. So you can see that server is started successfully. Navigate into the postman and send the request over again. Only this time we are getting an error in our response, and this error is triggered by the express, and it is showing an error because we have not defined route for this request. So navigate into the code again, and then we will be defining the route for the get request. So right above the server started successfully, we will be creating our first route. So app.get, if the request is coming within get method, if you look into the postman, we are sending a request through get method. And if the request is coming to localhost 8000, then comma, and then the second parameter will handle that request. And this second parameter is an arrow function that will have an SS to request and then response. And this request is response is typically written as REQ and RES as we discussed previously. And now let's send in response. So res.send, and inside of it, hello from this server, right? Let's save this and let's restart our server. For that, Control C or Command C and then node app.js. So server started successfully. Navigate into the postman and send the request over again. So you can see hello from this server. So congratulations, you have successfully transferred the server creation process from HTTP module to Express. So now let's try changing this response to something else. So instead of hello from the server, we will be changing it to hello world, right? So every time I make a change in our code, even in the slightest change, I need to restart my server using Control C and then again node app.js, right? And it will be a hassle when we are working with large project. For that, we need to automate our server restarting process. And in the next lesson, we'll be speeding our development by automating the server restarting process using NodeMon. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson, we'll be learning how we can automate the server restarting process using NodeMon. A NodeMon is a package that will help us monitor changes in our code and then restart the server automatically. So for that, let's go into our terminal. If you have server running, then close it for now, and then type npm install nodemon. Once this is installed in our project, we are ready to use it. You can go into npmjs.com and then search for nodemon, and it says that this is an application that automatically restarts the server if the file or the directory is changed, and this is exactly what we are looking for. So the way to use it is to navigate into the package.json, and inside of this scripts you want to create a new line, provide a comma over here, and then the key will be start and the value will be nodemon app.js, right? And for restarting the server using the nodemon, previously we did node app.js, right? But from now on we will be doing npm run start, and this npm run start will execute the script inside of this package.json, this script, and it says that it will start nodemon and it will execute this app.js file. So let's save this and then enter. And here you can see nodemon is starting and the server is started successfully. Now if I navigate into app.js, if I send the request from our postman, you can see that I have gotten hello world response. Now if I change the file, say hello world to hello node.js, and then save it, then the change is automatically detected by this nodemon or node monitor, as we can call it. It has automatically detected the changes and restarted the server. So now if I send the request, I can see that hello node.js, the updated response. And this is how you automatically restart the server after every change. By doing this, you are saving a lot of time because you do not have to restart your server every time you make a change, right? So from the next lesson, we will start working on our new project called BooksWizard. So I'll see you there. So for starting the project, I have created a new directory called BooksWizard. You can go ahead and create your own directory. And now let's open this directory from VS Code. So launch your VS Code, file, open folder, and then navigate into that folder and select the folder. So now let's set up our new project. So the first thing that you want to do is to create a new file called app.js that will act as an entry point, right? So now let's go ahead and install some of the dependencies. So terminal, new terminal, and then at first, before installing any project, we'll be initializing the npm in our project. So npm init, right? Now press enter a couple of times and npm will be initialized. So we have got our package.json file. Now let's install Express. npm install Express. Once the Express is installed, let's go ahead and install nodemon as well. So npm install nodemon. After the nodemon is installed, navigate into package.json and create a new line, and then start will execute nodemon app.js, right? Save this, navigate into app.js, and let's create a server. You can pause this video and create a server on your own. So I believe that you have created a server, so let me create the server on my side. So const express equals to require express, right? And then the const app is the express app, right? And then app.listen, it will be listening to port 8000, and then the callback function will console.log server started successfully, right? Now let's save this and let's start our server using npm run start. So server is started successfully, but we are not sending any response. So let's create first route. So app.get, if the request is coming through localhost 8000 using any get method, then our callback function will be handling this. This will have an SS2 request and response, and we'll be sending response.send, and inside of it we'll be writing hello from BooksWizard, right? Let's save this. Let the nodemon do its job. Navigate into the postman and send the request in the same URL. So hello from BooksWizard. So we have successfully set up our project. Now it's time for us to work with APIs. But before starting the API development, let's first understand what REST API is and how we can use different methods of REST API. So I'll see you in the next lesson. So before proceeding into the development of our BooksWizard, let's first understand what APIs are and what REST APIs are, right? So API stands for Application Programming Interface. It is a way for the client to communicate with a server. So here you can see that this postman is a client and it is sending a request to the server, and server is responding to the client request with a certain response, right? But this client can only send request to those route that has been declared in our backend or the server, right? So if it tries to send anything, for instance, if it tries to send a request to localhost 8000 and something, then our server will respond with an error. It says that cannot get slash something because we have not declared the route in our server. So API defines which resources can be accessed by the clients and which cannot. API can roughly be said as a bridge between the client and the server. It can either allow the client request to be processed in the server or it can reject the request. So that's about API. So what is REST API? So REST API is nothing more but an API that has certain design principles. REST API has certain principles that defines how a request can be sent to the server and how a server should process certain kinds of request. For instance, in the REST API, there are different methods of sending the request. Currently, we are sending the GET request, right? So if you want to access something from the server, then we should be sending the GET method of REST API. So this GET is used to denote that we are trying to get something from the server. This POST is used to send some data to the server for processing or to create something. This put request is used to edit or modify data in the server. This patch request is used to edit the data of the server. Delete request is used to delete something from the server, and so on. So REST API in itself is nothing more but an API, but it has certain design principles that a developer should follow for sending the request and to process the request, right? So now that we have a basic understanding of what APIs are and what REST APIs are, let's proceed with our development. And if you are not clear what REST APIs are, no worries, because we will be using REST API in the upcoming lessons and your confusion and doubts will be clearer then. So I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson, we will be working on creating different routes of this BooksWizard. Currently, we need 4 different functionalities in our BooksWizard. The first one is to create record of the books. Second is to edit those record of the book. Third is to delete the record of the book. And the fourth one is to get all the records, right? So we are looking for the CRUD operations. Now we need to create different route for handling those requests. So let's go ahead and create those routes. So first let me remove this hello from BooksWizard. So now here we'll be creating the routes. So let me comment routes over here, right? And the first route will be the creation route. So app.post. Now in the REST API, if we need to create some data in the server, then the request should be of post method. If you are trying to send some data to the server, then the method should be the post method, right? So we will be using post method for creating the data. So you should keep that in mind while working with REST API. Post method is used to send data to the server for creation or to be processed by the server. So inside of this, the first parameter will be the URL. So while working in backend, we generally use /API as an starting point of our routes. So /API books, meaning that if the post method is used to send a request to localhost 8000 /API /books, then the second parameter, an arrow function, will be handling that request, and it has an access to request and response. And for now, let's send the response of res.send hello, or let's write here create book route, right? Let's save this, let the node do its job, and then navigate into the postman. Let's rename this to create book, right? And our method will be a post method, right? And let's send the request. So currently we have not defined this only slash over here, right? So we have only defined /API /books. So let's go here and type /API /books and then save it and send the request. And here you can see create books route. So now that our create book route is working fine, let's go ahead and create some other routes too. So let's copy this. And if the request is sent using the patch method in this same URL, then we'll be responding with edit book route, right? And if the request is sent using the delete, then the response will be delete book route. And if the request is sent using a get method, then get book route, right? Let's save this and let's create all of this route in the Postman as well. So duplicate this, right click and duplicate this one too, and then duplicate again. Now let's rename this. So this one will be of get method, and then let's rename it to get books and save it. And this route will be the edit book, and it will be using the patch method. Save it. And then this will be the delete book, and this will be of method delete, right? Let's save this and let's try sending the request. So when I send the request to create book route, if I send the request to get book route, edit book, then I'll be getting edit book route and then delete. So every route is working fine. So now that we have created 4 routes in our app.js, our file looks a little bit complex, don't you think? So in the next lesson, we will be refactoring these routes and create a different file for handling different functions. So I'll see you at the next lesson. So in this lesson, we will be working on creating different handler file for each routes. And it is very important to create different file and assign different function to it, because when you are working with larger project, if you keep every functionality or every logic inside of this app.js file, then this app.js file will be difficult for us to maintain. It will eventually have 100 if not thousands of lines of code. So let's go ahead and create the handlers file and then clean up our app.js. So create a new folder over here, and the name of the folder will be handlers. And inside of it, let's create a handler for create book route. So new file, create book.js. And inside of this create book, let's create a function. So const create book equals to an arrow function, right? And this function of this file needs to be accessed by this app.js. So we need to export this function from this file. So for that, what you need to do is module.exports equals to, and then the function name. So send it over here, right? Now by doing this, we are exporting this function from this file. Now this app.js will be able to access this create book. So let's go into this app.js and use this create book. So instead of doing all this, let's remove the second parameter completely and then write create book over here. So now this create book need to be imported from this file. So we need to create a variable over here. So const create book, this variable. So const create book equals to require. Now we are importing the file, and inside of it dot slash means the working directory of our project, and inside of it there is a folder, and inside of the folder there is a file called create book. Now you don't need to write .js over here because it will automatically detect that this is a JS file. So inside of this handler and create book, we are importing this create book. So let's save this. Now if you do not want to import this manually, then what you can do is you can simply go into this create book, keep your cursor at the end of this word, and then press ctrl and space or command and space, and VS Code will suggest you that file. But sometimes Visual Studio Code cannot suggest this file for many reasons. So in that case, you need to import this manually. So let's save this. Now let's navigate into this createbook.js. And this createbook.js will now be able to access request and response parameter, right? And from inside of it, we will be sending in response.send, and from inside of it, we will be sending create book route new, right? Let's save this and let's try to send a request from Postman. So create book and then send the request. So here you can see we are getting the response, the new response that is sent from the handler. So our handler is working perfectly fine. So now I want you to pause this video and create a handler for these 3 different routes. So go ahead, pause this video and create a route for yourself. So I believe that you have created a route, and let me do it on my side. So I'll be creating a new file over here. So instead of creating a new file, let's duplicate this. So copy and paste and then edit book. And inside of it, it will be a function of edit book. And then copy this and export it over here, right? And this is edit book route, right? Save this. And inside of this app.js, we'll be replacing this with edit book, right? VS Code has already suggested. Let's save this. We'll be creating now for delete also. So duplicate this, copy and paste, and then delete book.js, and inside of it will be the delete book. Copy this and paste it over here, and this is for delete book. Navigate into app.js, remove all of these and import delete book from here, right? And this is for get book, so duplicate this one, copy paste, rename this get books, and this will be get books. Copy this, paste it over here, and then inside of app.js rename this or change this to get books, right? And make sure all of these files are imported. So now let's send a request from our postman to see if everything is working fine. So send the request to this post. So create book route, get books. So in get books we are currently getting edit book route. So let's navigate into our code, and this get inside of this, let's navigate inside of this, and here you can see we are writing here edit book, so all book route, right? Save this. And by the way, if you want to go directly into this file from this page, then you can press CTRL and then click at this file, right? This is a simple VS Code trick. Now let's send the request to get again. So all book route, edit book route is working fine, and then the delete book route is working fine, and we are able to minimize the code in our app.js. Let's remove these spaces or line breaks as well, and let's save this. So we have reduced our code and we have refactored all of our code to their respective files. So now that if I want to edit the functionality of create book, then I can simply make changes over here without making any changes in app.js, right? And this has made our code easier to read and easier to maintain. So in the next lesson, we'll be working on other functionalities of BooksWizard. So I'll see you at the next lesson. From this section onward, we'll be working on MongoDB database. Now there are two ways to use MongoDB in our Node.js app. One is to install MongoDB and use it locally in our device. And another is to use MongoDB Cloud. It is a cloud hosted MongoDB database. And to install MongoDB and configure it is a little bit hassle. So instead of using it locally, we will be using the cloud service, and it is free for certain limits and it will be enough for us. So let's create our MongoDB account by navigating into mongodb.com and then try free. So you can register using your email address or you can directly sign up from Google. So accept the privacy policy, read it if you want to. So MongoDB will ask you some questions. So fill this up. To learn MongoDB, we'll be creating something like this, and then our preferred code will be Node.js or JavaScript, and finish. So now you can select this M0 free plan, right? And the provider is AWS. That's right. You can choose any region as you want, and the name will be BooksWizard, right? Just write this. You can write any name that you want over here and then create. So the MongoDB database is created. Now it's asking for the username and password to access that. So click at auto generate, or you can write any password that you want. I prefer auto generating, right? And copy this password so that you can use it again. So copy this and keep it in a secure place. It is very important. So I'll be pasting it in my notepad, right? And then create a user. So we'll be creating this user, and this user will be able to access our database. Now navigate below, and then where would you like to connect from will be my local environment. That's all right. And in this IP address list, I want you to type 0.0.0.0/0, meaning that we will be opening access from all the IPs. And when you go into the production, you can restrict the IP, but for now, don't restrict anything. So the description is allowed from anywhere, right? Add an entry. So we are allowing access from anywhere. Now when you go into the production, you can change this, and then finish and close, and then go to database. So our cluster is being created right now. Wait for a while, and if it's taking too long, you can refresh the page. Now after the database is created, it should look like this. So now we need a connection string to MongoDB. So click at connect and click at drivers, and then scroll below, and we need this URL. Copy this, right? And replace this password with the password that you have saved previously. So I have saved my password over here. So I'll paste my connection string over here, copy this password from here, and then paste it over here, right? Now this will be the connection string to our MongoDB database, and store this safely because we will be needing this for the connection, right? So now let's close this, and you can click at this BooksWizard to navigate into your database. And after we create, or after the data is created in the database, it will be displayed inside of this collection tab. But it will be difficult for us to access our database from the web, right? So we can download a software called MongoDB Compass that will help us see the data stored in the database in an easier way, right? So let's go ahead and install MongoDB Compass. It is a software that will help us access the MongoDB cloud. So search for MongoDB Compass in your search engine, and then the first URLs will generally lead you to the download section. So you can download this on your device depending on your operating system, right? And once you have downloaded, this is what the interface should look like. So I have already connected to previous database, so it is displaying over here. So but for you, what you can do is you can click at this new connection, and in this URI you should paste the URL that you have created using the password. Make sure your password is over here. So copy this URI and then paste it over here, right? And then click at save and connect, and write your database name over here. So in my case it will be BooksWizard, right? And then select the color and save and connect. Now it will be connecting to our MongoDB cloud. And here you can see our database. This admin and local is created automatically. I recommend not deleting it because it is the system file, right? And this is how you access the MongoDB cloud. And every data that we create will be displayed in the database section, right? So congratulations for setting the MongoDB cloud and MongoDB Compass. This will make our development easier. And now the most important thing, connecting to MongoDB using our Node.js app. So for making the connection to MongoDB using our Node.js app, we will be needing a package called Mongoose. It is a driver for Node.js to connect to the MongoDB database, right? So let's install this in our project. So navigate into the project, close the server if it's already running, and then npm install Mongoose. So once the Mongoose is installed, navigate into app.js, and let's import Mongoose over here. So const Mongoose equals to require Mongoose. Now we need to use this Mongoose to connect to our database. So after the app is declared express, what you need to do is mongoose.connect, and the first parameter will be the URI. So inside of this, copy your database connection string and then paste it over here. And the second parameter will be the configuration. We will leave it an empty object, right? And then you need to write then over here, right? And then will be a callback function. If the connection is successful, we will be logging console.log connection to MongoDB is successful, right? And then if there is an error, then inside of it will be a callback function, and then console.log connection to MongoDB failed. Now let's save this. And the prettier has already formatted our code after the saving, right? So this is how you connect to MongoDB database using Mongoose. So let's start our server. So npm run start, right? And here server is started successfully, and then you can see connection to MongoDB is successful. And this is how you make a successful connection from your Node.js app to MongoDB cloud or MongoDB database. So now that we have a connection to our MongoDB database from our Node.js app, let's work on the CRUD operations. So I'll see you at the next lesson. Now before starting the CRUD operations, first we should structure our data. For that, we need to learn what are models and schema in Mongoose. To make it easier for you to understand how models and schema work and what they are, I have created this for you demonstration, right? And in this, I'll be showing you what are models and schema in terms of Mongoose and how we can use models and schema to structure our data. So the overall system that you see over here is in MongoDB cloud. The books that you see over here is the collection of books, right? So this is called books collection, but in Mongoose we refer to this as models. So this is a books model, right? And inside of the books model there is a collection of books, right? There are different books with different author, different rating, and different book name and different ID, right? So the headers that you see over here, the book name, ID, author, rating, these are called schema in Mongoose. These are the schema, these are the data type of the model. This book is a model, these are the schemas. So in a simple way, model is a collection of data and the schema are the data types. It is as simple as that. So let's create this model before we start jumping into the database operations, right? So navigate into our app.js file and then create a new file, and we'll be naming it as books model.js, right? And inside of the books model, we'll be creating a model for books. So we'll be creating this one, this object right here, right? So for that, we need to access the mongoose. So const mongoose equals to require mongoose, right? And the next step is to create a model. So const books model equals to mongoose.model, and inside of it will be a model name, so books, right? And then in the second parameter there will be the schema definition. So these headings will be in the second parameters. So let's write here books schema. Now we need to create this schema, so copy this and create a new variable. Const books schema equals to mongoose, new mongoose.schema, and then inside of it will be an object that will hold these headings, right? Now let's look at the headings. So the ID is automatically created, no need to create the ID, book name, author, and rating. So now the first field will be the book name, so book underscore name, and this will be of type string. We need to define the type, right? And the second field will be the rating. Second field will be the author, right? So second field is the author, and this will be also of type string, right? And then the third field will be the rating, and this time it will be of type number, right? Let's save this, and now we need to export this so that it can be accessed by our app.js file. So for that, module.exports and then books model, right? Let's save this, and now let's import this in our app.js because we need to initialize this model. So go into app.js, and right after this mongoose connection is successful, write a comment over here, and here will be our models. So here require, and then simply we will be typing the working directory and then the books model. Now we need to make a slight change in our connection string. So to create a new database, we can simply type our database name right before this question mark. So here I'll be typing BooksDB, right? Now let me save this and let the server restart. Once the server is restarted, navigate into MongoDB Compass and then click refresh. And here you can see we have a new database BooksDB, and inside of it there is a new collection or model called books, right? And inside of this will be our data, and the schema that we have created will affect the data that will be created. And this is how you work with models and schema in Mongoose. Now in the next lesson we will be working on CRUD operations, so I'll see you there. So now that we have our books model ready and initialized, it's time for us to work on CRUD operations. And at first we'll be working on this create a book route, because without creating the data of books in our database we cannot perform other operations, right? So let's work on this route. And this is how create a book route should work. So when user is trying to create a book, they will be sending the book data, for instance book name, author, and rating, right? This data needs to be sent in the request for the server to be processed. So we must find a way from which the user or the client will be able to send data to the server. So now let's head into the Postman and let's try sending some data to the server from the client. So navigate into this create book route. Now from this request we need to send certain data to the server, right? And for sending the data to the server we will be using the JSON data. We are using JSON because it is lightweight, it processes faster, it is easier to read, and in most of the backend, JSON is widely used, right? So a way to send JSON is to go to the body tab and then the raw, and the data type will be the JSON. And inside of it, we'll be writing the JSON. We typically call this JSON payload. We are sending this data to the server, so it can be referred to as JSON payload. So let's write a JSON data over here. So currently I'll be sending book underscore name is to rework, right? Let me save this. And now let's start the server. So terminal, new terminal, and then npm run start, right? So after the server is started, let's send the request again. So in the request, we are providing the JSON data or JSON payload. Now our server needs to read this JSON payload and process it in our server. So let's navigate into our code. And the request parameter you see over here will hold all the record of the request that is coming to this route. So let's console that. So console.log request. Let's save it. So now let's send the request again. So send. And in console, you will be able to see all the request data. But the only that is relevant to us for now is the request.body, because we are sending the JSON payload in our body, right? So we need to read this request.body. So let's send the request again. And here you can see we have got undefined in our console. And the reason is the Express is not able to parse the JSON data. Or we can say that by default, Express does not accept the JSON data, right? Now for making it able to accept the JSON data and to parse it, we need to navigate into our app.js, and right below this app equals to Express app, we'll be writing app.use, and inside of it, express.json. And using this function, now Express will be able to parse the JSON data that is being transferred to the server, right? So now let's send the request over again. And in the console, you can see the JSON payload data. Now the server is able to receive the data from the client using request.body. So currently we are only receiving this book name, but we need three things for creating the book data. So in books model, we can see that we need book name, author, and rating. So let's create this in our JSON payload. So the book name is rework. Let the author be ABC, right? And let the rating be 10 for now. Let's save it. And then let's send the request. And here in the console, you'll be able to see all the data that is required for creating a book record in our database, right? So using this data, we'll be creating our first record in database. So navigate into createbook.js. And now for the database operations, we must import mongoose first. So const mongoose equals to require mongoose. Now we are importing mongoose in this file. And now the next step is to have an access to the books model. So we'll be creating a variable here, const books model equals to mongoose dot model, and inside of it the model name, so books. And in this file we do not need to import this books model because it is already initialized in our app.js, right? So we'll be only getting an access to the model. Now for creating the data in our database, we can use the create function. So books model that we'll be working on dot create, and using the create function we'll be able to create a new data in our model. So inside of it will be an object that needs to be created. So here we'll be creating a new book data with book name. So book underscore name equals to request.body, meaning this whole object, and inside of this object we have book name. So request.body.book underscore name. And another one is the rating or the author. Another one is author. So author, the author is inside of request.body.author, right? And then the rating. So request.body.rating. Now let's save this. And now instead of sending this response in a plain text, we'll be using JSON. So we'll be using JSON payload in the request, and in the response also we'll be using the JSON, so as to maintain the consistency, right? So instead of response.send, we'll be writing response.json, and inside of it will be the JSON data. So status equals to success, and then the message will be book created successfully. Right, let's save this. Let's remove this console.log, and we are almost ready to create a data in our database. Before sending the request, we need to understand one thing. So in this create book model, we are creating the book and then we are sending the response, right? But while creating a book, our code takes a little bit of time because we are trying to communicate with the database, right? And as the JavaScript runs on asynchronous model, meaning that none of the code will wait for the execution of another code. So this will be a problem because sometimes this response of book created successfully will be triggered before even the book is created. Now this will be a problem. So we need to instruct the JavaScript to wait for the execution of this block of code that might take some time and then only process the other block of code. And the way for doing that is to use the await statement in our block of code, which might take some time. So by doing this, we are waiting for this code to execute before executing other part of our code. And for using this await statement in our function must be of asynchronous type. So type async over here. And this is how we convert the asynchronous code to synchronous format, meaning that we will wait for the execution of certain part of code before executing any other code that are after it. And while working with database operations, it is mandatory that we use this await statement because database operations will take some time, right? So now let's go ahead and send a request from our postman. So we have our payload ready and send the request. And here you can see the JSON response, book created successfully. Now let's navigate into the MongoDB Compass and have a look at the newly created data. So inside of this books collection, you'll be able to see the newly created data. And this is how you create a data on your database. So in the next lesson, we'll be working on getting this data from the database. But before that, let's create 2 to 3 books in our database so that it will be easier for us to get the list of books, right? So navigate into the Postman and create some books on your own. You can create your favorite book. So one book is 5 AM Club, right? The book created successfully. Let me refresh this. And here is rework 5 AM Club. Let me create another book as well. So another one is Leadership Wisdom. Let's send the request. And let's refresh it. And now that we have some books in our database, let's work on fetching this data from our get book route. So I'll see you at the next lesson. So in this lesson, we'll be working on fetching data from our database, meaning that we'll be working on this get books route. So we'll be working on the database from this file as well. So let's go ahead and import mongoose over here. So const mongoose equals to require mongoose. And now let's get an access to our books model as well, because we'll be getting the data from that model, right? So const books model equals to mongoose.model and then books, right? And now for getting the data, we will be using the find functionality. So books model dot find, and inside of it will be an empty object. And now this function will return the list of books. So let's save it in a constant. So const get books equals to books model dot find and then the empty object. So now as we are communicating with the database and this code might take some time, we should be using the await statement over here. And this will be an async function, right? Now we need to send this get books data to our response. So instead of sending this plain response, we'll be writing res.json and inside of it status success. Now you do not need to write status success every time. It is just my personal preference. So the next message, so the data will be the get books, right? So let's save this and let's try to send a request from our route. So navigate into the postman and in the get books route, let's send the request. And here you can see we have got the data from our database, from our books model, right? So this is how you fetch data from the database. Now if you look into our code, you can see that we are passing an empty object over here. This empty object is for the condition. For instance, if you want to see only the books that has rating of 10, then you can write your condition inside of this object. So I want to find the book whose rating is 10. Currently we have all the books that have rating of 10. So we will be getting all the data over here. Right, but let me send this condition. So here if I provide this condition, book name is rework and then send the request, then you can see I have only got the book that matches the book name of rework. So this is for the condition, but for now, as we are getting all the data, we do not need this condition. So we are passing an empty object over here. So this is how you fetch the data from the database. Now in the next lesson, we'll be working on this edit book route. So I'll see you at the next lesson. So in this lesson, we'll be working on this edit book route. So let's navigate into edit book and let's import mongoose over here. So const mongoose equals to require mongoose, right? And from this route as well, we will be accessing the books model. So const books model equal to mongoose.model and then the books, right? So let's navigate into the Postman and see how an edit book route should work. So if you see the list of the books from this get route, then you can see that each of this book has a distinct ID field over here. So if a user is trying to make a change in a certain book, then they need to send us the ID so that our backend can detect which book they are trying to edit. So let's navigate into this patch request, and here we'll be sending the JSON payload. So navigate into body, raw, and then data type will be the JSON. So the first thing that we'll be sending is the book ID. So book underscore ID is the book ID they are trying to make changes to. So let's navigate into get books and let's copy this ID. So paste it over here. So by sending this book ID, our backend will be able to figure out which data needs to be changed, right? And next thing that we need to send here is the value that needs to be updated. For instance, if I want to rename this book name from rework to rework B2, then I should be sending book name equals to rework B2, right? So if I send a request, then nothing happens because we have not modified our edit route code. So let's navigate into this edit book and let's start working. So instead of sending this plain text, we will be sending JSON data. So JSON, and inside of it, status will be success, and then the message will be book edited successfully, right? And now we'll be writing our modifying code over here. Now if we need to make a change to a data in the database, then we need to use the update one functionality. So books model just update one, and in the first parameter will be the condition for getting that book. So here we'll be needing the book ID, right? So underscore ID is the request.body.book underscore ID, because we are getting this from our JSON payload, right? And the second parameter will be the things that we need to update in the data. So book underscore name will be the request.body.book underscore name, right? And then let's save this. And as this is an database operation, it might take some time, so await. And this function is an asynchronous function, right? So let's save this again and let's try to send the request. So navigate into the Postman and then let's send the request. So book edited successfully. Now if I navigate into get books and send the request, you can see that our book name has been updated from rework to rework B2. Now if you want to change the multiple variables at once from the same request, then what you can do is you can simply write all the variables that you are accepting change to. So rating will be the request.body.rating, right? And then the author will be request.body.author. Now by doing this, we are updating multiple fields in our data. So navigate into the Postman again, and then this time we'll be updating the author. So the author, let it be DEL, right? Send the request. Let's get the data. So here you can see the book name and author are updated, right? And this is how you update the data in our database. Now in the next lesson, we'll be working on this delete book route. So I'll see you at the next lesson. So in this lesson, we'll be working on deleting a data from our database. So let's navigate into this delete book and let's import mongoose over here, right? So const mongoose equals to require mongoose, and we'll be assessing the books model. So const books model, not hooks books, equals to mongoose.model and then the books, right? And now let's navigate into the postman. And in this delete book route, we'll also be needing the ID of the book. So if you look into this edit book route, for editing a book, we are sending this book ID over here so that server can detect to which book the change is to be made, right? And now this needs to be done in our delete book as well. We also need to pass an book ID. But we cannot use JSON payload in delete method. It's just the design principle of REST API. In delete method, we cannot send any data to the server. So we should figure out a way to send the book ID, but without using this body payload or JSON payload. And the way to do that is to use the URL. So instead of using this body, we'll be appending our book ID in the URL itself. So API/books/ and then the book ID. So if we are trying to delete this ID, then we can send it over here. Now if I send the request, you can see that we get an express error because this route is not defined, right? But this is only way to send data from the client to the server in the delete method. So let's find a way to fix this. So navigate into our app.js, and in the delete request, we will be providing a new parameter, and this will be book_id, right? Let's save this. Let's navigate into the postman again and let's send the request. So here you can see our delete route is working fine. Now we need to figure out a way to get this ID from this route. So navigate into the delete book route and then let's console request.params. We are not sending the body, but we are making change to URL parameters. So we need to detect request.params. Let's save this and let's send the request again. So if I send the request, you can see that in console we have got an object with an book ID. So whatever we have written in this parameter, book ID, will be displayed as an object as an URL parameter. So if I change this to something_id and save it, and if I send the request again, then you can see that I have got something_id over here. But for now, let's modify this to book ID so that we'll be getting book ID in our object. And now let's delete the book. So navigate into delete book and we'll be using books model dot delete one, and inside of this object will be the condition for deleting. So _id will be the book_id that is inside of request.params, right? Now let's save this, and as this is in communication with a database, this will be of await statement, and then this function will be async. And then we'll be sending data or response in a JSON format. So rest.json and status is success, right? And in the message we'll be writing book deleted successfully, right? Let's save this and let's send the request. So send it, and here you can see that book is deleted successfully. Now if I go into this get books and if I refresh this page, you can see that rework version 2 is deleted completely from our database, nowhere to be found ever again in the history of mankind, right? So this is how you delete the data from the database. So with that, we have completed our CRUD operations, and in the next section we'll be working with OpenAI. That will be interesting, so I'll see you at the next section. So in this section we'll be working on integrating OpenAI in our BooksWizard. We'll be prompting OpenAI for providing us with book suggestions based on the data of our database. We'll start by creating OpenAI developers account, and then we'll be generating our API key for prompting OpenAI, and then we'll be integrating OpenAI into our Node.js app, and we'll be prompting OpenAI for providing us with book suggestions based on the data in our database. This will be an interesting section, and I'll see you at the next lesson. In this lesson, we'll be working on creating an OpenAI account and integrating it in our Node.js app. So navigate into openai.com and click at sign up. Now you can create your account using an email address, or you can use Microsoft, Apple, or Google account. So for now, I'm using the Google account. Now in most of the cases, when you sign up, you might see OpenAI is not available in your country, and if that's the case, you can always use the VPN to register your account. So now that you have registered, fill up this form, and you need to verify your number as well. So once you verify your number, this is the dashboard that you should be landed at. So click at API to see the API references. So you might be navigated to platform.openai.com. If not, you can navigate into here. And now for sending request to OpenAI, we must be generating our API key. So click at your account and click at view API keys. And then create a new secret key. And you can name your key. For now, I'll be writing testing key. And I'll be creating my secret key. So copy your key and place it somewhere in a safe place so that we can use it later. Now, if you click at this uses, you can see your available limit on OpenAI. So currently OpenAI has granted me $5 credits. When you are creating a new account, they generally provide $5 credits to test the prompts. But I believe that this will be enough for us to test. But if you want to extend your limit, you can always upgrade your account. So in the next lesson, we'll be working on integrating OpenAI in our Node.js app. So I'll see you at the next lesson. So now that we have an API key for OpenAI developers account, it's time for us to integrate OpenAI into our Node.js app. So now let's navigate into our project and let's create a new route for the suggestions of books. So new file inside of the handlers and book suggestions.js, right? And inside of it, there will be an arrow function. So const book suggestions is an arrow function, and we'll be exporting this. So module.exports, and then the book suggestions, right? And now we need to import this in our app.js. So copy this, navigate into app.js, and here you will be using that. So app.get /API, if someone sends a request to localhost 8000 /API, and then OpenAI or AI, then this request will be handled by book suggestions, right? Now move to the end of this word, control and space, and VS Code will suggest you. If it does not, you need to import it manually, right? Let's save this. This book suggestions will now be getting request and response over here. And for now, let's send response.json, and then status will be hello from AI, right? Let's save this and let's create a new route in our Postman. So let's duplicate this get book route and let's rename it to OpenAI suggestion, right? Now the URL will be API/AI, right? Now let's send the request, and here you can see the JSON response, hello from AI. Now we are ready to work on our route. So navigate into book suggestions, and we will be working to provide an AI suggestions using the data from our database, right? So we need to access the database. So const mongoose equals to require mongoose, and we will be accessing the books model. So const books model equals to mongoose dot model books, right? Now the first task will be to get all the data of the books from the database or from the books model. So for that, what we can do is const get books equals to, and as we will be interacting with the database, so await statement, and this should be async, right? Await books model dot find without any conditions, right? And let's console this. So console.log get books. So now let's send the request from Postman to see the response. So if I send the request, I can see that I have got all the data from this books model, right? So now that we have this books data, it's time for us to integrate OpenAI into our project and ask for more suggestions. So I want you to navigate into npmjs.com and search for OpenAI. And this is the package that we'll be using. So let's install that in our project. So npm install OpenAI. So once the OpenAI has been installed, let's import it in our JS file. So const OpenAI equals to require OpenAI, right? Now again, navigate into our OpenAI project package and then scroll below and you will see the configuration over here. So instead of requiring just the OpenAI, we will be needing this configuration and OpenAI API. So copy this, and instead of requiring this directly, paste it over here, right? And again navigate into the code and copy all of this line and paste it over here. Instead of writing all of this line ourselves, it will be easier and faster to copy this and then make the change, right? So now instead of this process.in bin API key, you can replace this with your API key of OpenAI developers account. In my case, this is my API key. Save it. And now let's try to understand what are the codes that we copied. So this block of code is just the configuration, right? And this is initializing OpenAI into our file. And here is the main part. This function create chat completion of OpenAI will help us get AI suggestions, and inside of it there is an object, and the model that you see inside here is the same model that is used by ChatGPT. So GPT 3.5 Turbo, right? And inside of these messages we can send the prompt to OpenAI to get suggestions. So if I replace this hello world and write give me 3 cat names, and currently we are logging the response from OpenAI. So let's send the request. So once the request is sent, navigate into the terminal, and here you can see I've got the suggestion Luna, Simba and Whisker. So congratulations for successful integration of OpenAI. So now it's time for us to ask for book suggestions instead of cat names. So let's construct our prompt. So before sending the request, const prompt equals to give me 10 book suggestions based on these books, right? And in this part we will be sending the books from our database. Now we have already queried our database for the books, right? And all the books is inside of this get books, but if you see the response of get books, it is in the array format, and we will not be able to send array to OpenAI. So instead of this we will be converting this to string. So instead of directly appending an array over here, we will be doing getBooks.toString. And now instead of consoling this getBooks, let's console this prompt. So console.log prompt, right? Let's send the request to see the prompt response. So navigate into the Postman and send the request. And here you can see the prompt. Give me 10 book suggestions based on these books, and we are sending data of our books in a string format, and ChatGPT or OpenAI is smart enough to detect the book name from here. So let's pass this prompt instead of give me 3 cat names. So the content will be the prompt. Now let's save this and let's send the request, and we will be getting the suggestions for books based on the books that are in our database. So once the server is started, let's send the request. So now you can see that OpenAI has suggested us some books. The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that was also written by Robin Sharma, the leader who had no title, Robin Sharma. So all these responses are generated by OpenAI based on the data of our database. So this is how you prompt OpenAI. Now let's send this in our response, right? So let's copy this or cut this and remove this console.log and paste it over here. So suggestions is the chat completion, right? So navigate into the Postman again and send the request. And here you can see the real-time suggestions or recommendations from OpenAI. Now in these suggestions we don't need this role, so let's remove that and only display this content. So suggestions.message.content, right? Let's save this and let's send the request again. So here we have these suggestions. So now that you have suggestions of OpenAI over here, you can display it however you want. You can format it and display in any manner that you want. So this is how you work with OpenAI, and this is how you provide prompts and get suggestions from OpenAI. And the possibility of it are endless. You can provide any prompt over here and get the suggestions. So you can play it around yourself and explore the possibilities, right? And this brings an end to our course. I hope you like this course, and in the next lesson I'll be providing you some resources that will help you a lot in your Node.js development journey. So I'll see you there. Thank you for choosing this course, and I congratulate you for completing this course. I hope that this course has helped you understand the fundamentals of Node.js, Express, MongoDB, and OpenAI. This course is created to get you started in the development of Node.js. Now, if you are serious about Node.js development and want to pursue career in Node.js, I highly recommend that you take a look at the NodeJS Masterclass. You'll be able to find NodeJS Masterclass in my profile. It is a comprehensive course covering all the aspects of Node.js that will turn you into a proficient backend developer. So navigate into my profile and look for NodeJS Masterclass. And I congratulate you again for completing this course, and I'll see you at the Masterclass.